Many seasons ago, Studio Artland created a series. Episodic by nature and soothing in tone, it was completely unlike any of its peers. It was a breath of fresh air for all who watched it. Since 2005, many have been awed and inspired by this very show. A show known as Mushi. She.
Hello all, and welcome to my first ever anime review on this channel. Now, when people start this sort of thing, they generally try and go with a show which they feel passionately about, whether that be negatively or positively. So I thought to myself, what better way to start than with a show which is very close to my heart, Mushishi. Mushishi is a 26-episode TV series produced by Studio Artland in 2005. It was directed by Higoshi Nagahama and was written by Yuka Yamada. Summarising the plot of Mushishi is a deceptively simple task. This is because of the fact that Mushishi is an episodic anime. What this means is that each episode has its own self-contained plot, and as such there isn't really any overarching narrative, with each episode roughly following the same structure, with our protagonist Ginko finding an individual or group of persons beset by problems of differing levels of severity, all of which being caused by Mushi, the simplest form of life in this world, which act as a sort of catalyst to trigger the events which the episode focuses on. And hopefully by the time the credits are rolled, some form of conclusion has been reached. The issue comes from the fact that from this description alone, it would be perfectly reasonable for you to think that Mushishi is some sort of Monster of the Week type show, with our testosterone pump protagonist Ginko pulling weapons and the like out to do battle with Mushi on a weekly basis. Which couldn't be further from the truth, if I'm perfectly honest. See, Mushishi is in fact a far more tranquil watch, with the quote-unquote action rarely getting above Ginko blowing smoke at little blighters. And even the Mushi themselves can hardly be called a malicious force. They're just simply another form of life doing what they must to survive, which can have some rather unfortunate side effects for those living within their vicinity. Mushishi instead decides to focus upon the scenarios which the Mushi themselves create, and how they affect the daily endeavours of those living around them. This allows Mushishi to tackle almost as many themes as there are episodes, including loss, protecting those you love, whether or not something is truly evil. And all of them are masterfully done, without being overly heavy-handed or overwrought. And something else you should have gathered from that list: Mushishi can be pretty heavy sometimes. Indeed, whilst Mushishi is commonly referred to as a relaxing program, or a show to fall asleep to, that doesn't necessarily mean that any given episode may not be chilling and melancholic in equal parts. In fact, many of my favourite episodes were the time when Mushishi would dance the fine line between a relaxing spa treatment and a quaint little horror story. It was this calming and yet sombre atmosphere which, for me at least, only added to the unique nature of the stories themselves. Usually with this sort of episodic show, eventually the creators will run out of ideas and create a dud episode or two. But this simply isn't the case with Mushishi, with each episode telling its own beautifully woven narrative. In fact, rarely have I seen a show's story so flawlessly and meticulously created, and all in the space of 23 minutes no less. In fact, many of Mushishi's stories almost feel like folk tales from generations ago, which would have been used at the time to explain natural phenomena via the creation of mythical creatures known as Mushi. And it's this classic feeling, as well as its sparse use of anime tropes and conventions, which make it one of those shows where you can go to just about anyone. Oi! Fancy watching some Mushishi? Another aspect which adds to Mushishi's classic-like quality is its visuals. Mushishi's art is often nothing short of stunning, with its beautiful, rich background art often perfectly encapsulating the setting in which the episode is set, whether that may be a lush, verdant forest, or stark, desolate mountains caked in snow. And in fact, this same level of detail is often applied to Mushishi's animation. Mushishi follows the school of reducing the detail of its characters and environments in certain scenes in order to allow the animators to animate more freely. And whilst this does mean that Mushishi is perhaps not the most visually consistent show out there, it does allow for the animators to show all of the small incremental details in any given movement, all of which helps to make Mushishi's world feel truly alive, even if that world is populated by faceless blobs. Speaking of faceless blobs, I really have to give credit to the animation of the Mushi, which was almost always fluid and made the movements of these ethereal plankton-like beings truly beautiful to behold, and really helped establish them as a credible life form. In fact, credibility is perhaps a good way to sum up Mushishi's visuals. Nothing feels new or artificial. The colour palette comprises of more washed out and earthy colours, and even the settlements which Ginko visit feel worn down and lived in. And all of this perfectly matches the more slow and considerate pace of Mushishi. And in fact, slow and considerate are both words which could be ascribed to the protagonist of the piece, Ginko. To put it simply, Ginko is perhaps one of my favourite protagonists of all time, which is strange when you consider he lacks many of the hallmarks a great protagonist should possess. For example, he receives relatively meagre character development, and he doesn't really have any main goal to speak of, aside from helping the people he's currently acquainted with. However, he makes up for all of this by simply possessing bucket loads of charisma. It's hard to explain, but there is simply something infinitely watchable about Ginko, which when combined with his soft-spoken ways and his calm and knowledgeable air, make for a thoroughly enjoyable screen presence. In fact, this blank slate-like quality of Ginko is used to Mushishi's advantage, meaning that whenever any tiny morsel about Ginko's past is revealed, it is gratefully received, as well as ensuring that he doesn't detract from the week-to-week cast. Speaking of which, in many cases the supporting cast in Mushishi are just as important as the lead himself, so it's a good job they're done as well as they are. This is because their development and story are generally the focus of their allocated episode, often relegating Ginko to an almost Deus Ex Machina-like role, with his involvement essentially boiling down to "Come in!" "Hi there, got Mushi problems? Of course you do. Need a magic tea bag? Of course you do." "Oh, thank you. What's the dosage on a magic tea bag?" "Oh no, don't worry about that sort of thing. Just remember to take it after you've dealt with all of your personal demons. Okay, see you in a bit." "See you at the end of the episode." However, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, with the majority of the supporting cast being engaging, relatable, and receiving just enough development to ensure that they're memorable. For whilst you may forget their names and faces, you will remember their stories. However, this does bring me on to one of their flaws. The characters in Mushishi are designed in such a way so as to appear more realistic, and whilst this does fit in with Mushishi's overall tone, it does unfortunately mean that there are less design quirks available to the character designers, and as such characters do end up looking like those in previous weeks, and eventually they all just seem to blend together really. However, this is hardly a major flaw and shouldn't really impact your enjoyment from episode to episode. All in all, the entire cast did a wonderful job as being an anchor for the audience into the surreal and wonderful world of Mushishi. Although, I am rather jealous that they get to live in a world where they can pin all of their problems on supernatural sludges. Finally, onto the musical side of things. Now, whilst I thought that Toshio Masuda's score was always appropriate for the scenes in which it was played, I never felt it was anything truly incredible. This doesn't mean it's bad by any stretch of the imagination, far from it in fact, but its lilting piano melodies often added to both the tone and the atmosphere of the scenes in which they're used. It's just that I felt there was perhaps an over-reliance upon electronic instruments, which for me at least, didn't really mesh with the more natural and organic feeling of the show itself. Although, it does make for rather excellent revision music, if that can be considered a plus point. It certainly was for me. Now, in regard to sub and dub, if that's something we still bring up in reviews, I'd say it's one of those lovely instances where you can really go with either option. It's because both options have their own plus points and negatives. The Japanese, for example, feels more authentic, which is certainly appropriate given the fact that many of Mushishi's episodes almost feel like old Japanese folklore. With that being said, I've always been a massive fan of Travis Willingham's performance as Ginko in the dub, and as such I feel like you can really go with either version. And that's about it really. So as you can probably tell from these past few minutes of gushing, I simply adore this show. And I've barely even scratched the surface of all of the hidden details and smaller parts which truly make this show a masterpiece. Of course, it is by no means a perfect show and it has its flaws here and there, such as the fact that some people may find little reason to watch the next episode due to its episodic nature, as well as the fact that they may be turned off by its more calm and relaxed air, as well as the fact that some of its character designs eventually begin to look similar to those which appeared in previous episodes. However, for me at least, these were by no means major grievances, and certainly didn't detract from Mushishi's timeless method of storytelling, its picturesque visuals and its engaging cast. In many ways, it's a show in which you get out what you put in. You can simply enjoy it on surface value, viewing it as a relaxing show to fall asleep to, or you can get down into the nitty-gritty symbolism of it all, and interpret various design elements such as the design of the Mushi, perhaps how Ginko's design reflects the fact that he's a bridge between the Mushi world and the human one. What I'm basically trying to say is that there are many different ways for you to watch this show, and I think you'll enjoy every single one of them. As it currently stands, it's quite hard to get hold of Mushishi in the UK, although if you're lucky you can find the odd DVD box here and there. However, you can watch it all over on Funimation's YouTube channel. And the second season of Mushishi, all of which both of the critiques and plus points apply to, is up on Crunchyroll. So as I said at the beginning, this is my first review, and so if you have any critiques or thoughts, please leave them in the comments, and also if you have anything to say about Mushishi, please also leave that in the comments. And once again, thanks for watching.